Chair recognizes Representative Jackson.
Thank you so much, and we acknowledge that we miss our dear colleague, Conley. Thank him for his years of service. Mr. Speaker, it was 39 years ago. Here in Washington, D.C., I was arrested while protesting against the apartheid government in South Africa's white minority that had a non-minority white for the greater part of the latter half of the 20th century held captive, if you will, in bondage, which sanctioned racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against its black citizens. I believe your policies on South Africa at this point in your career are wrong, precisely because either you do not understand the history of the country or you have grown indifferent, and I beg that you go to your higher nature. That being said, I want to ask you about President Trump ending U.S. government support for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility that promotes fairness in hiring and helps make our national security workforce the strongest it can be. In the name of advancing an anti-woke agenda, he has given himself permission to break the law, attacking congressionally mandated efforts that have enjoyed bipartisan consensus for decades. I believe not only in diversity is our strength as a country, but in fact, our workforce does not reflect our population, then it merits an inquiry into what are the impediments that are leading to that outcome. Would you agree with that latter statement, that diversity is our strength?
Welcome back to the Constitution Corner, where we stand for truth, liberty, and the values that make our nation the greatest in the world. If you're new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our deep dives into the critical issues shaping America. Today, we're going to dive into a moment from a recent congressional hearing that speaks volumes about the left's obsession with identity politics and their hypocrisy when it comes to following the law.
I think unity is our strength.
Okay,
that
well,
we're a diverse nation is important.
While those words you would think that they were mine, they actually are recorded from you in your Senate hearing in July of 2022. Further, do you believe that following the law is important, yes or no?
We follow the law every day.
Okay. Well, you wear so many hats, it must be difficult to keep track of all the laws that you have supported. But yes, you did vote in favor of the bill, and I want to read a section of the bill that you did support. It's Section 5403 of the 2022 NDAA requires that the State Department to strengthen recruitment of people belonging to underrepresented groups. I know Mr. Trump has asked you all not to say that as cabinet officials, and I hope you have the guts to tell the president on some matters he is simply wrong. Mandating outreach to universities, employees' affinity groups, and expanding paid student internships are among the actions. So I would like to know, do you stand by strengthening diversity within the ranks of the State Department?
I stand by hiring the best people to do the job, irrespective of their background, their race, color,
so you're going
creed.
against the
that's
very
the
law that
American way.
you had once supported, which I find highly contradictory and hypocritical. I hope that you would have the courage of your convictions, be the Marco Rubio, the senator that we knew, and not the Secretary of State that is now capitulating to that of a tyrant and that of Donald Trump. At this point, I would like to yield my balance of my time to that of the Honorable Sarah McBride, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The president was elected, as far as I recall.
I've yielded my time, sir.
Representative Jackson's remarks during this session were, frankly, a perfect example of how the left continues to weaponize terms like diversity, equity, and inclusion to push their agenda. Now, let's be clear. Diversity is important, but not when it becomes a tool to undermine meritocracy and the principle of hiring the best person for the job. Representative Jackson seems to believe that diversity in and of itself is the greatest strength of this country. But as patriots, we know that isn't the case. Unity, shared values, and a commitment to the Constitution are what make America strong, not dividing people into categories based on race, gender, or any other characteristic. Let's break down what happened here. Representative Jackson criticized President Trump for ending government support for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives. She claimed this decision undermines fairness and somehow weakens our national security workforce. But here's the truth. These initiatives have become less about fairness and more about enforcing quotas and ideological conformity. They've morphed into tools for advancing a woke agenda that prioritizes optics over qualification and performance. That's not what America is about. Jackson also referenced Section 5403 of the 2022 NDAA, which mandates the State Department to strengthen recruitment from underrepresented groups. Now let's think about this for a second. Do we really want government agencies to prioritize diversity over hiring the most qualified individuals? Imagine if we applied this logic to our military or our intelligence services. Would you feel safer knowing that someone was hired because they checked a box, rather than because they were the best person for the job? Of course not. But here's where things get really interesting. Jackson accused Secretary Marco Rubio of being hypocritical for supporting Section 5403 in the past but now standing by his commitment to hire based on merit. What she fails to understand, or deliberately ignores, is that merit-based hiring is not contradictory to fairness. In fact, it's the very definition of fairness. When you hire the best person for the job, regardless of their background, you're ensuring that every American has an equal opportunity to succeed. That's what true equality looks like. Now let's address the bigger picture. Jackson's remarks are part of a broader trend we've seen from the left, where they equate disagreement with their policies to moral failure. She even went so far as to suggest that Rubio has somehow capitulated to President Trump, calling him a tyrant. This kind of language is not only disrespectful but also completely detached from reality. President Trump's administration has done more to restore accountability and meritocracy to the federal government than any administration in recent history. Ending these so-called diversity initiatives isn't about being anti-diversity, it's about being pro-American values. It's about ensuring that our government works for the people, not for political ideologues. And let's not forget Jackson's attempt to tie her argument to her own personal history of protesting apartheid in South Africa. While her activism against apartheid is commendable, it has absolutely nothing to do with the issue at hand. The fact that she tried to draw a comparison between apartheid and the end of DEI initiatives is not only a stretch but also an insult to the real victims of systemic oppression. So here's my take as a patriot. We need to reject this divisive rhetoric. We need to stand up for unity, meritocracy, and the principles that make this country great. Diversity is not our strength. Shared values, hard work, and a commitment to the Constitution are. And let's be clear, ending these initiatives is not about excluding anyone. It's about ensuring that everyone has a fair shot, based on their qualifications and abilities, not their race, gender, or political alignment. If you agree that it's time to push back against the left's woke agenda, hit that like button and share this video with your friends and family. Let's keep this conversation going because the future of our nation depends on it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Constitution Corner. Together, we can fight for the truth and ensure that America remains the land of the free and the home of the brave. We are the Constitution Corner, where Americans' root guides its future. Until next time, stand strong, speak truth, and may God bless the United States of America.